Hare Krishna.
Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदानेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। बोलो श्री राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की
जय।
जय। Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Ram.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Raje.
Yeah.
सभी लोगों ने कल अयोध्या मंदिर का इनॉग्रेशन देखा होगा, प्राण प्रतिष्ठा।
हाँ देखा था।
Freedom after 500 years. Independence. तो अच्छा था काफी. Pretty nice. We'll also see some part of it at the end of. तो resume करते हैं. And जैसा कि हम लोग we have been looking at this. There are 12 cantos. 12 स्कंद है श्रीमद् भागवतम में. And we are on 6th canto right now. So we are like almost halfway through. छठा स्कंद हम लोग पढ़ रहे हैं, which talks about the prescribed duties for mankind. And as we know, how many shloks are there in whole Srimad Bhagavatam?
18,000.
18,000 shloks, yeah. And there are 332 adhyayas total. So we are on Canto 6th and we are on chapter 16th right now. Yeah? We were reading about King Citraketu. So if you remember, there was a fight between King Indra and Vritasur, right? And Vritasur, even though being a demon, he went back to Godhead, right? So he went back to Vaikuntha Dham, and that was a question, like how could a demon go back to Vaikuntha? And so that's where Sukdev Goswami Ji Maharaj, who is reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam to whom?
Parikshit Maharaj.
Parikshit Maharaj, right? The Gangadhar Sukdev Goswami Ji is reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, and he's answering the question, why did Vritasur went back to Godhead? And in that relation, he's telling the story of King Citraketu. So, start chapter 16. Hello, Hare Krishna, Tarun. So, King Citraketu, as you know, he had everything.
Hare Krishna, Gajan.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. And he had everything, but then he was still missing something. He had so many queens, but he had no son. And so when once Angira Muni appeared, he asked for a son. And because he asked for it, Angira Muni said that, he will get one, but that will be full of happiness and then unhappiness. So a son is born to King Citraketu. Everybody is happy and everything else. But then he starts ignoring all the other queens, and only the one who had the son, he was paying attention to. And so other queens became jealous. They gave poison to the son, and that son died. And that's where Maharaj Citraketu is lamenting, right? So he's really in a big distress. And that's where Narad Muni and Angira Muni sees the condition of Maharaj Citraketu. And then Narad Muni and Angira Muni comes down, and then they try to console King Citraketu. And that's what we are reading right now. So let's continue reading. And after Citraketu finished his prayers, the unlimited Supreme Lord explained knowledge of himself to Citraketu. So that's what we are going to read, how Narad Muni and Angira Muni consoled him, and then continue from there. So we'll start with Shlok 1. Anilji.
जी श्री बादरायणीरुवाच अथ देवश्रुषि राजन् सम्परेतं नृपात्मजं दर्शयित्वेति होवाच ज्ञाति नामनुशोचताम्. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, "My dear King Parikshit, by his mystic power, the great sage Narad brought the dead son into the vision of all the lamenting relatives, and then he spoke as follows. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah? So Sri Badrayani Ruwach. So who is Sri Badrayani? Who is being referred as Sri Badrayani?
Sukadev Maharaj.
Sri Shukdev Goswami ji. Yeah. Sri Shukdev Goswami ji is also called as Sri Badrayani. So Shukdev Goswami ji is saying to King Parikshit that Narad Muni, who is Dev Rishi, right? Dev Rishi is Narad Muni. He got the dead son back, right? Based on his mystic powers. And then he spoke as follows. Ajay?
Shri Narad Uwach Jivatmana Pashya Bhadram te Mataram Pitram cha te Suhrido Bandhava Stapta Shucha Pratyakritya Bhisham. Sri Narad Muni said, O living entity, all good fortune unto you. You just see your father and mother, all your friends and relatives are overwhelmed with grief because of your passing away. Hare Krishna.
So Narad Muni brings the son back into life, right? And telling him that your mother and father, everyone was in a shock. So, he asks him to come back to life. Prem sir?
Kalivaram swam avishwa seshwam ayu shrudavata bhukshamata bhogan pitru pratna ahishtata nipasam. Because you died untimely, the balance of your lifetime still remains. Therefore, you may re-enter your body and enjoy the remainder of your life, surrounded by your friends and relatives. Accept the royal throne and all the opulences given by your father. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Narad Muni is telling the soul of that son that re-enter your body. And then, of course, you are the son of the king, Citraketu. You can enjoy the royal throne and all the opulences given by your father. Rinaji?
जीव उवाच कस्मिन् जन्मन्यमि मह्यं पितरो मातरौ अभवन् कर्मभिर्ब्राह्मणस्य देवतिर्यङ्गनिर्योदिषु. By the mystic power of Narad Muni, the living entity re-entered his dead body for a short time and spoke in reply to Narad Muni's request. He said, according to the results of my fruitive activities, I, the living being, transmigrate from one body to another, sometimes going to the species of the demigods, sometimes to the species of lower animals, sometimes among the vegetables, and sometimes to the human species. Therefore, in which birth were these my mother and father? No one is actually my mother and father. How can I accept these two people as my parents? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so even though Narad Muni brings that son back, the soul into that body, and then he's saying that I am just the living being who is transmigrating from one body to another based on the karmas, right? Karma bhi bhirman manashya. And of course, based on the karmas, taking birth as different species. So he's saying like, so who are they? They are not my mother and father. How can I accept them as my parents? Is what he's saying. Yeah. Say here, like here it's made clear that the living being enters a material body that is like a machine created by the 5 gross elements of material nature. And as we know, those 5 gross elements are earth, water, fire, air, and sky. Right? That's how the gross body is composed of. And of course, below that is the 3 shuttle elements, as we call it, Suksham Sharir, right? And Suksham Sharir is mind, intelligence, and ego, which is Man, Buddhi, and Ahankar. So a material body is composed of the gross elements and then Suksham Sharir. Yeah. It says that as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, there are 2 separate identities called the inferior and superior natures, which both belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the results of a living entity's fruitive actions, he is forced to enter the material elements in different types of bodies. So based on the karmas, he can go up to the upper or lower inferior natures.
Quick question भैया,
Hmm.
ये 84 लाख योनियों में फ्रूट्स और वेजिटेबल्स भी आते हैं क्या?
Yeah.
इससे पीछे हमें नहीं मालूम था. Just asking.
So I think that's where the roots are. Right? Not all the fruits and not all the vegetables, right? Anything which has a root has a life, basically. So all the trees, for
अच्छा
example,
अच्छा.
right? Yeah. The other fruits come on the leaves of the trees, so they are not part of those living entities as such.
अच्छा अच्छा.
Tarun, Vinod ji, पढ़ेंगे आप?
Yes, yes. बंधु जिनते हरिमध्यस्थ मित्रो दस्तन विधि विषः सर्व एव हि सर्वेषां भवन्ति क्रमशो मितः. In this material world, which advances like a river that carries away the living entity, all people become friends, relatives, and enemies in due course of time. They also act neutrally, they meditate, they despise one another, and they act in many other relationships. Nonetheless, despite these various transactions, no one is permanently related. So true. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So basically, what he's saying, right? That, of course, as we know, everyone enters into so many different types of relationships here, right? Some are friends, some are enemies. But in spite of all that, no one is permanently related because everyone has a limited time in one's particular body. Tarun?
यथा वस्तूनि पन्यनि हेमादिनि ततस्तथा पर्यस्तन्ति नरेष्व एवं जीवा योनिषु कर्तुषु. Just as gold and other commodities are continually transferred from one place to another in due course of purchase and sale, so the living entity, as a result of his fruitive activities, wanders throughout the entire universe, being injected into various bodies in different species of life by one kind of father after another. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. And actually, it's a nice purport. Let's read this. Arina ji?
Okay, yes.
The same living entity sometimes takes shelter of an animal father and mother, and sometimes a human father and mother. Sometimes he accepts a father and mother among the birds, and sometimes he accepts a demigod father and mother. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Brahmanand Brahmai Kona Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bija. Harassed life after life by the laws of nature, the living entity wanders throughout the entire universe in different planets and different species of life. Somehow or other, if he is fortunate enough, he comes in touch with a devotee who reforms his entire life. Then the living entity goes back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, it is said, Janme Janme Sabe Pita Mata Paya, Krishna Guru Nahi Mile, Baja Hari Ek. In the transmigration of the soul through different bodies, everyone in every form of life, be it human, animal, tree, or demigod, gets a father and mother. This is not very difficult. The difficulty is to obtain a bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. Therefore, the duty of a human being is to capture the opportunity to come in touch with Krishna's representative, the bona fide spiritual master. Under the guidance of the spiritual master, the spiritual father, one can return home back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we know, he himself was an incarnation of Lord Sri Krishna in the form of Radharani, right? And he himself has written that it's not difficult to get mother and father because that everyone will be born based on the karmas in different species. But if he is fortunate enough, then he comes in touch with a devotee who reforms his entire life, and then the living entity can go back home, back to Godhead. Yeah, because then, yeah, he can be a devotee of Lord Sri Krishna. And that's the only way the devotional service by which he can go back to Godhead is what is mentioned. Yeah. नित्यस्तार्यतस्य सम्बन्धो प्राणित्यो दृश्यते नृषु यावदस्य हि सम्बन्धो ममत्वं तावदेव हि. A few living entities are born in the human species and others are born as animals. Although both are living entities, their relationships are impermanent. An animal may remain in the custody of a human being for some time, and then the same animal may be transferred to the position of other human beings. As soon as the animal goes away, the former proprietor no longer has a sense of ownership. As long as the animal is in his possession, he certainly has an affinity for it, but as soon as the animal is sold, the affinity is lost. A nice purpose. So let's read this, Tarun.
Aside from the fact that the soul transmigrates from one body to another, even in this life, the relationships between living entities are impermanent, as exemplified in this verse. The son of Citraketu was named Harshasoka, or jubilation and lamentation. The living entity is certainly eternal, but because he is covered by a temporary dress, the body, his eternity, is not observed. Dehinosmin yatha dehe komaram yovanam jara. The embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. Such the bodily dress is impermanent. The living entity, however, is permanent. As an animal is transferred from one owner to another, the living entity who was a son of Citraketu lived as his son for some time. But as soon as he was transferred to another body, the affectionate relationship was broken. As stated in the example given in the previous verse, when one has a commodity in his hands, he considers it his, but as soon as it is transferred, it becomes someone else's commodity. Then one no longer has a relationship with it. He has no affection for it, nor does he lament for it. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. And it even says that Dehino ismin yatha dehe kumaram yonam jara, right? Like the embodied soul continually passes in this body also from boyhood to youth to old age, right? That's something we experience anyways. But so what that means is the bodily dress is really impermanent. But the living entity, which is the soul, is our permanent. Yeah. Anilji?
Evam yoni gato jiva sanityo nirahankratah yavadyatro palabhyeta tavat swastyam hi tasya tat. Even though one living entity becomes connected with another because of a relationship based on bodies that are perishable, the living entity is eternal. Actually, it is the body that is born or lost, not the living entity. One should not accept that the living entity takes birth or dies. The living being actually has no relationship with so-called fathers and mothers. As long as he appears as the son of a certain father and mother as a result of his past fruitive activities, he has a connection with the body given by that father and mother. Thus, he falsely accepts as himself as their son and acts affectionately. After he dies, however, the relationship is finished. Under these circumstances, one should not be falsely involved with jubilation and lamentation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Huh? Ajay?
एष नित्यो य अव्ययः सूक्ष्म एष सर्वाश्रयः स्वदृक् आत्म आत्ममाया गुणैः विश्वमात्मनं सृजते प्रभु. The living entity is eternal and imperishable because he actually has no beginning and no end. He never takes birth or dies. He is the basic principle of all types of bodies, yet he does not belong to the bodily category. The living being is no sublime that he is equal in quality to the Supreme Lord. Nonetheless, because he is extremely small, he is prone to illusion by the external energy, and thus he creates various bodies for himself according to his different desires. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, it says here, Atma Maya Gune Vishwamatman Srijate Prabhu. Actually, so he is actually the living entity, which is the soul, right? He is equal in quality to the Supreme Lord, is what is mentioned. Basically, what it means is he has some quality, all the qualities which the Supreme Lord has. But it's he's extremely small, right? So it's in a smaller quantity. And then also he's prone to be illusioned by the external energy. When he comes in contact with the external energy, right? As he gets into the material nature, then he forgets about himself. And of course, he gets different bodies based on the desires and karmas, is what is mentioned here. Again, it's a nice purport. So let's read this. Prem sir?
In this verse, the philosophy of Achintya Bheda, simultaneous open oneness and difference is described. The living entity is eternal, Nitya, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the difference is that the Supreme Lord is the greatest, no one being equal or greater than him. Whereas the living entity is Sukshma, or very extremely small. The Shastra describes that the magnitude of the living entity is 1/10,000th the size of the tip of a hair. The Supreme Lord is all-pervading. Andantara stha parmanu chayandra stham. Relatively, if the living entity is accepted as the smallest, there should be naturally be inquiry about the greatest. The greatest is the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, and the smallest is the living entity. Another peculiar characteristic of the Jiva is that he becomes covered by Maya. Atmaya Gunai. He is prone to being covered by the Supreme Lord's illusionary energy. The living entity is responsible for his conditional life in the material world, and therefore he is described as Prabhu, the Master. If he likes, he can come to this material world, and if he likes, he can return home, back to Godhead. Because he wanted to enjoy this material world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave him a material body through the agency of the material energy.
Hare Krishna. So you see few important things mentioned here. And one is again the quantitative measure given, right? Living entity is 1/10,000 the size of the tip of a hair. Yeah. That is the size of the soul, right? The soul is 1/10,000. the size of a tip of a hair. So if you take a hair, 1/10,000th of that is what is the size of the soul. So do remember this. We'll talk about it again and again. So that's one. And then, of course, also it's being mentioned here that because he wanted to enjoy the material world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave him a material body through the agency of the material energy. Because many times there's a question, right? Why things are happening to people and why are we here? Why we have been sent here? So it's not that the Lord has sent us here, it's because we wanted to come here. As a soul, having some independence, we desire that we want to enjoy the material nature. And that's why we are here. But once we are here, as we know, we realize the material body, it goes through the material energy. And then we, of course, fall into the misery of this world. And then still, the Lord gives us a chance to go back to Godhead by engaging into devotional service. Right? So let's continue reading this. Vinodji? Mute pair. Yeah, Vinodji, mute.
Yes, that's it.
Hello. Yeah.
Okay. As the Lord Himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hardase Arjuna Tisthati Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Ayudhani Mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. O Arjun, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The Supreme Lord gives the living entity a chance to enjoy in this material world as he desires, but he openly expresses his own desire that the living entity give up all material aspiration, fully surrender unto him, and return home back to Godhead. The living entity is the smallest Sukshma. Jiva Goswami in this connection that the living entity within the body is extremely difficult for materialistic scientists to find. Although we understand from authorities that the living entity is within the body is different from the living entity. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. So like we have the body, Suksham Sharir, and the living entity, which is the soul. Right? Rinaji?
यस्यास्ति प्रियः कश्चिन्न प्रियः स्वः परोऽपि वा एकः सर्वधियां दृष्टा कर्तॄणां गुणदोषयोः. For this living entity, no one is dear, nor is anyone unfavorable. He makes no distinction between that which is his own and that which belongs to anyone else. He is one without a second. In other words, he is not affected by friends and enemies, well wishers or mischief mongers. He is only an observer, a witness of the different qualities of men. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Tarun?
Asking me, Vijay?
Yeah.
Sorry. Nadata atma hi gunam, na dosham na kriya phalam, Udyastinavad asina, paravara drig ishvara. The Supreme Lord, Atma, the creator of cause and effect, does not accept the happiness and distress that result from futile actions. He is completely independent of having to accept a material body, and because he has no material body, he is always neutral. The living entities, being part and parcel of the Lord, possess his qualities in a minute quantity. Therefore, one should not be affected by lamentation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anilji?
Shri Badarayani Ruvacha Ittadhirya kato jivo gyatayastasya te tada vismita mumcha shokam kshitvatma sneha shrankhalam. Sri Sukadev Goswami continued, when the conditioned soul, Jeev, in the form of Maharaj Citraketu's son, had spoken in this way and then left, Citraketu and the other relatives of the dead son were all astonished. Thus they cut off the shackles of their affection, which was due to their relationship with him, and gave up their lamentation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so as we see, Narad Muni got the Chitraketu's son back, but then Chitraketu's son, he said like he doesn't recognize their parents, and then and there was no relationship as such, right? And then so this way Chitraketu gives up the lamentation. Yeah. So Prem sir.
Nirhityam gyate devam ito uchita kriya tatya yudustyajam sneham shok moh bhyatridhyam. All the relatives had discharged their duties by performing the proper funeral ceremonies and burning the dead child's body. They gave up the affection that leads to illusion, lamentation, fear, and pain. Such affection is undoubtedly difficult to give up, but they gave it up very easily. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Ajay.
Baladhanyo Viditas Istatatra Bal Hatyat Prabha Bal Hatya Vratam Cheru Brahmanai Yanni Rupitam Yamunayam Maharaj Smarno Dvij Bhashitam. Queen Krityaduti's co-wives who had poisoned the child were very much ashamed, and they lost all their bodily luster. While lamenting, O king, they remembered the instructions of Angira and gave up their ambition to bear children. Following the directions of Brahmans, they went to the bank of Yamuna, where they bathed and atoned for their sinful activities. Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Itam Pratibuddhatma Chitraketur Bhaktibi Chitraketur Dvij Joktibi Grihand Kupan Nishtkrantah Sarah Pankadeva Dvivaha. Thus enlightened by the instructions of the Brahmanas, Angira and Narad, King Chitraketu became fully aware of his spiritual knowledge. As an elephant becomes free from a muddy reservoir of water, King Chitraketu came out of the dark well of family life. Hare Krishna.
Kalindyam vidivat snatva krita punya jala kriya monena samyata prano brahmaputra avandata. The king bathed in the water of the Yamuna, and according to prescribed duties, he offered oblations of water to the forefathers and demigods. Very gravely controlling his senses and mind, he then offered his respects and obeisances to the sons of Lord Brahma, Angira and Narada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So as we know, Angira Muni and Narad Muni are son of Lord Brahma. Yeah. And they are the ones who came to console Chitraketu. Okay. Anilji?
अथ तस्मै प्रपन्नाय भक्ताय प्रेतात्मने भगवान् नारदः प्रीतो विद्यामेतामुवाचः. Thereafter, being very much pleased with Chitraketu, who was a self-controlled devotee and surrendered soul, Narada, the most powerful sage, spoke to him the following transcendental instructions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Om Namastubhyam Bhagavate Vasudevaya Dhimahi Pradyumanaya Niruddhaya Namah Sankarshanaaya Cha Namo Vijnana Matraya Paramananda Murtaye Atma Ramaya Shantaya Nirvattadvaita Drishtaye. Narad gave Citraketu the following mantra. O Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, who are addressed by the Omkara, Pranav, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. O Lord Vasudev, I meditate upon you. O Lord Pradyuman, Lord Aniruddha, and Lord Sankarshan, I offer you my respectful obeisances. O reservoir of spiritual potency, O supreme bliss, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are self-sufficient and most peaceful. O ultimate truth, one without a second, you are realized as Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagwan, and are therefore the reservoir of all knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Yeah. So this is the mantra which Narad Muni gives to Maharaj Citraketu. Yeah. A nice purport, but I think we'll read it tomorrow. I think we'll pause here. And from here, like the spiritual knowledge and the mantras given by Narad Muni to Maharaj Citraketu is what we'll continue to read tomorrow. Yeah. So we'll pause. And since we had this Ayodhya Ram Lala deity installation, let's, for 7 to 8 minutes, we will see some part of that. Yeah. Is that good? And we'll see the Ram Mandir installation. So let's see that.
दर्शन पुष्पार्चन करेंगे, कार्मिकों से मिलेंगे और प्रस्थान करेंगे। डाक विभाग के अधिकारी उनको पीछे की ओर आ जाना चाहिए, मंच के पीछे।
बोलो श्री रामचंद्र भगवान की
Jai.
That was good.
Very
Very good.
huh?
That was very good.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it was very actually it was pretty nice actually. I was watching it yesterday night
Yeah.
and went on. Then they had a speech and all that, which was also good, pretty good.
Yeah.
So you saw Giri Govindaji Maharaj here, right? Actually, one who took the, like, let me point it 1 second. See. Here. Is Giri Govindaji Maharaj.
Mm.
I saw him in Vancouver last year.
That's nice.
And then, he told me the whole story about how they decided that he's the one who came out with 22nd January and why and all that. Like, I don't know if you saw the picture. Let me show you quickly 1 second. I had sent a picture to. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, so I saw him in Vancouver last year. I stayed in the same place for 3 days, and then I actually went with him wherever he went. 3 days actually.
Okay.
So he was telling all the stories about, how everything came together and what they are trying to do and all that. It's very nice.
Wow, that's good.
So
That's a wonderful experience, huh?
yeah, amazing. So
Yeah.
he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam in the temple in Vancouver, and my friend's place is staying there, and then I also stayed at that place. So we used to have. He's 75 years old actually,
Mm.
and so he used to have morning tea at 5 a.m. So he'll put 1 spoon of ghee in his tea actually. So he used to carry his ghee with him. I put 1 spoon of ghee in the tea every day, drink. And he said the ghee is what carries him, like.
Yeah, that's what Starbucks came out with olive oil.
So, anyways, that was nice. So he said how 22nd January was decided and all that.
Okay.
Very interesting. They took Murat from 15 different astrologists. Oh, he actually also came in New Jersey last year. Tarun, you probably saw him there in Jitendra Muchal's house.
Yeah, we met him. We were lucky to meet him in person.
Yeah. So I don't know if you see Jitendra Muchal, he used to join our Srimad Bhagavatam for a few minutes earlier. I haven't seen him in recently, but so he's also very connected everywhere. So Giri Govindaji Maharaj came to his place.
Yeah, so he was Govinji Maharaj was at the Babs temple for some of the activities for a few days when the Babs new one was opening.
Okay.
And during that time, he was staying for a few days at Jitenji's home.
Also, he was the chief guest for the BEPS, one of the.
Not, I don't know if chief guest, but he was there. There's a lot going on. A lot of dignitaries were coming. He was also there at that time, around that period.
Okay.
So I don't know the specifics, but there were some things going on at that time. So one evening they called some close people. So I was lucky enough to make into that circle.
Right. It's nice. Interesting. Anyway, so Lord Ram is there now. And next is Krishna Janambhumi, which will happen if Modi ji comes back this year. So this date 22nd was very important because if you don't do the inauguration on 22nd January, like now the election times are coming. Within the next 3-4 months, there'll be elections in India. So then you cannot do all this. It had to be done in January.
It was executed very nicely. बहुत अच्छा लगा. जो coverage वगैरह जितना किया है, arrangements.
Very well defined.
Well, very well organized.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now one more place to visit in the next trips.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That's why they sent like those Pila Chawal and all that to everyone, right? That's an
Akshat,
invitation to visit to Ayodhya. In India, it pretty much went to every house.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why in the
That's the engagement. It's like your ticket to come to Ayodhya.
correct. Yeah. That's why at custom, it was very interesting. They never asked this, but at custom, immigration, right? They asked me like, "Are you bringing any rice?" Like, no.
दुपारी लाए हैं क्या तभी ये आने को मिलेगा.
Grains are not allowed.
So nice.
Chalo, so we'll see you tomorrow at 9:30. Continue reading
Yeah.
our Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
everyone.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Good to see you, Anil ji.
Yeah. Anilji just up. So he just back from we lost Tarun and Anilji both. Okay. Anilji came back from he was in India for November and December. So he's back. Yeah.
अच्छा, अच्छा.
Chalo, Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna.